Hey, what's up? Justin here, and what I wanted to talk about today is shock. So in your life, inevitably, there's going to be these extreme, big, deep shocks that just happen to you and your system, and by definition, you're not going to see them coming. They're going to come out of nowhere and just floor you. So how you interpret and manage these shocks, both for yourself, your system, and your well-being, and also for the situation that you're in, is extremely important, and hopefully just seeing a little bit of glimmer of light in the grief and the pain that you're experiencing in that moment. So the first type of shock I think you can experience is a shock from some kind of attack or some dark energy or some betrayal that's directed right at you, and it's a conflict that can be extremely shocking, especially if it's from a friend or someone that you trust. The second type of shock is a complete shattering of how you see the world, your worldview, and your ideas having to be completely reworked. That can be extremely shocking in itself and really cause a lot of emotions and experiences to kind of come up within you, and you will have to process that as well. The third type of shock I think is more of a life shock, something that happens and it's a little bit more in the natural flow of life, and you can experience that shock with all your emotions and engagement in a little bit more of a sentimental way, but obviously still shocking. So the first type of shock is when there's some kind of conflict, and you can kind of see it in hindsight that there's this collision course between you and another person or another soul that has just been bubbling up under the surface, and eventually it's just going to crack, and there's going to be this extreme painful kind of conflict where you're both going to feel pain, and someone's maybe going to come out a little bit on top of the other in that moment. So I'm not saying you're always going to be on the top. Sometimes you're going to be the weak person in that, and you're going to have to really think about that and process that. But I think the winner, if we want to use that frame, is the person who has a deeper and more grounded understanding of ethics and morals, and who is in tune with that understanding of the world in a little tiny bit more sense than the other person. So someone who's really, really deeply thought about ethics beyond the law and beyond, going into spirituality. What is an ethical thing to do in this situation, or what's the most ethical approach to life, and how I interact with people and other people's perspectives and how they see the world and their well-being. I think if you have that deeper understanding of ethics in yourself that's beyond human thought and beyond the law and all that kind of stuff, then you'll come out a tiny bit on top of that conflict. Now, it's still extremely painful because some darkness has just came at you, and you have to process that, and can take a long time to recover. You might feel exhausted and lethargic, but at least you can process it in a way where you know that you've put a lot of thought into it. And I think anything that you have to put a lot of thought into, anything that you really have to think about from all angles, is kind of positive in a way, because it's causing you to think. So the second type of shock is very similar to this. It's when you're on the other side. It's when a weakness or a darkness is exposed in yourself and it kind of comes out. So this can be very, very shocking because it will affect how you see the world and how you see yourself. And some of your weaknesses, you don't know you have weaknesses. They're just buried deep, deep inside you. And it's shocking because first, you know that that's inside you and it's just been sitting there the whole time. And second, you have to rework your kind of perspective and your interpretation of the world to kind of get rid of that weakness. And the idea with this one is just when you're about to transcend an idea, when you're about to become a better person, when you're just about to overcome some kind of weakness or darkness that's inside yourself, that idea will just thrash around in your body and it will just fight for its life. An idea is very similar to an organism, that it spreads and it wants to survive and it fights for its survival. So if you've got an idea inside you that's weak or dark or whatever it is, just when you're about to evolve it and transcend it, it'll fight around and you'll come out in a way that's maybe weak or maybe a bit dark to someone else. So you have to be on top of that situation and really maybe think about how you're going to react in that situation, as to not burn any bridges, and as to be self-reflective and sit with that in the moment and choose to be a better person in that moment rather than just kind of going at the other person. So it can be very, very shocking as well and very painful to experience, and you will have to sit with that feeling and think about it from all angles. Same thing, it can be very positive because it causes you to think a lot, and just sitting with that feeling and maybe interpreting it positively, in hindsight, as you becoming a better person, can be good in that sense. Now, the third type of shock is something that's a little bit more from a life event, so something that you don't see coming, and it's just kind of coming out of nowhere, obviously, because it's a shock, but it's a little bit more in the flow of life. And I think these types of shocks are more emotional. You're more tense, but you're more emotionally engaged with the whole process of it. Maybe there's a little sentimentality behind it, and I think life just doesn't want to have everything kind of planned out and mapped out before it. So it can be a shock of maybe like a death or something like that, that you have to experience a shock to your system and interpret that. And it really makes you think about life in the broader scope of things, where I don't think deep down your soul really wants to know what's going to happen in its whole life. So I think these shocks are just a normal part of life, and it's the same thing. If you sit with this feeling in your chest and this tension in the back of your neck, this physiological and physical reaction, and you maybe just try and choose a spiritual path to move through that shock, I think if you interpret it that way, maybe you can handle this situation and your well-being in a sense where you can see some glimmer of hope out of that darkness and out of that pain and out of that extreme lethargy or that extreme grief or whatever it is, that despair, whatever it is, that really dark energy, that darkness, then hopefully you can see that tiny glimmer of light. So if you can look at all those types of shocks from the bigger picture in a way where it's going to make you think, it's going to really make you process things and deal with them. Your soul doesn't want to experience life in advance, and you're just going through this journey of maybe teaching other people and other people teaching you, and this spiritual evolution, and you're learning as you go. If you can maybe just see that bigger picture, you can see that tiny glimmer of light in that spiritual path, then you can process these shocks hopefully in a way where we're just grateful just to be alive. So just being alive is enough to be grateful for. So I hope you guys gained some sort of value from this video. I'll catch you guys next time.
Good use of space there by Hayward. That's Pronin, who's checked in 10. Off the glass and drops. Good job by Justin Pronin.
Yeah, he can be a handful too.